Welcome to the Foundry by Forge College. I'm so glad you're here. Now, if you've been following along in our overarching track, the Solana ecosystem, DeFi, oracles, AI, and applied protocols, you know we've been deep in the weeds. In our last explainer, we were practically doing survival training, optimizing gas costs with paymasters, and making sure our payment rails didn't accidentally double charge anyone. Yikes. But today we are shifting gears. We're diving into the tokenized real-world assets module, and we're taking those exact same operational building blocks to do something really cool, bridging the physical and digital worlds. Let's get right into our RWA tokenization overview.
Here's our agenda for today. 1. Welcome to RWA Tokenization. 2. The receipt and registry. 3. Designing the backing model. 4. Rules and transfer semantics. 5. The token lifecycle. And 6. Conclusion and next steps.
Section 1. Welcome to RWA Tokenization. So, first things first, what exactly is a tokenized real-world asset, or RWA for short? Essentially, it's an on-chain token that represents a cryptographic claim on an off-chain asset, entitlement, or revenue stream. Look, we aren't just moving pure internet money around anymore. We're actually digitizing ownership of real, tangible things. It could be a physical warehouse receipt, a legally binding entitlement, or even short-term commercial paper. And that claim can be direct, like holding a legal unit of an asset sitting in a vault somewhere. Or it can be indirect, like representing a share in a larger pool. It's literally bringing the real world onto the blockchain.
Section 2. The receipt and registry.
Okay, so how do we make this whole thing fast, scalable, and most importantly, legally compliant? Well, we use a very deliberate architectural split. Think of it like a giant puzzle with two main pieces. On one side, we have the receipt. This is your standard SPL token. It's incredibly lightweight, super fast to transfer, and it plays perfectly with decentralized finance, or DeFi, applications. On the other side, we have the registry. This is a program-derived account, or PDA, and it carries all the heavy stuff. Compliance data, audit metadata, legal identifiers, the whole shebang. The best way to think about it is like a coat check at a really fancy party. The SPL token, that's just a little paper ticket you can easily toss to a friend. The registry is the secure, heavy-duty coat room that meticulously tracks exactly which heavy winter jacket belongs to which ticket. Because let's be real, you don't want to lug a heavy winter coat around the dance floor, right? You just want to trade the ticket. The guiding philosophy here is super simple but absolutely crucial. Treat the token as the receipt and a separate on-chain registry as the underlying asset record. If you try to cram all that dense, heavy legal registry data, like, say, a custodian's account number or the IPFS hash of a 50-page legal agreement, directly into the token itself, well, you're going to spike transaction fees through the roof and you'll completely break its composability in DeFi. Keep the ticket light.
Section 3. Designing the backing model.
Now, you might be wondering, why on earth should anyone trust that your digital ticket is actually backed by something real? That credibility comes from one of three backing models. Number 1 is custodial. This is where a trusted third party, like a traditional old-school bank, physically holds the assets and issues the tokens. Number 2 is algorithmic, where the tokens are backed by collateral baskets managed entirely by smart contracts. No vaults, just code. And number 3 is hybrid, which, as you probably guessed, mixes physical custody with on-chain reserve mechanisms. Depending on the asset you choose, your credibility relies on one of these models. And listen, each one requires its own highly specific operational controls and audits to ensure that token actually holds its value. No magic tricks here.
Section 4. Rules and transfer semantics.
So over on the Solana blockchain, we enforce real-world legal rules using what we call authority primitives. They're basically your on-chain control levers. The mint authority dictates who gets to create the supply. The freeze authority, that is your ultimate emergency brake for compliance. If there's some sort of legal issue, boom, you can immediately halt transfers. The delegate authority allows for the secure escrow or custodial movement of the asset. And finally, the burn authority represents the redemption and settlement phase. These SPL token authorities act as your direct on-chain levers for off-chain legal controls. When you're designing an RWA, you absolutely must explicitly list your assumptions around these levers, because trust me, they are the main targets during security audits.
But all of this raises a massive foundational question. How do we keep the on-chain supply and the off-chain vault in perfect sync throughout the asset's entire life? I mean, having a freeze button is neat and all, but if you mint 100 tokens and the bank only holds 90 physical gold bars, your entire system loses its economic credibility in a heartbeat. It's game over.
Section 5. The token lifecycle.
To solve that terrifying synchronization problem, the asset has to follow a strict, testable 5-step lifecycle. Step 1 is issuance. This is creating the mint and writing the initial legal metadata into our registry. Step 2 is distribution, which is safely moving those tokens into holder accounts. Step 3 is active holding, where the tokens circulate out there on secondary markets while we actively monitor health and variance. Step 4 is attestation. This is the heartbeat of the system, where we actually prove the physical assets still exist. And step 5 is redemption, which is burning the token to redeem the physical asset. It's a journey moving sequentially from the initial minting of the receipt all the way to final settlement.
Notice how perfectly the digital and physical worlds map to each other at literally every single step here. During issuance, your on-chain mint and PDA rely entirely on the off-chain custodian ledger. Makes sense, right? During a transfer, your on-chain associated token account logs are tightly bound to off-chain anti-money laundering or AML checks. During attestation, an on-chain PDA requires off-chain signed bank reports. And finally, for redemption, an on-chain burn log triggers the physical bank settlement off-chain. Everything has a twin.
The vital mechanism that prevents this entire blueprint from just falling apart is continuous, cryptographically verified reconciliation. I know, that sounds like a mouthful. But basically, the blockchain state must constantly be checked against the custodian's actual bank statements. Just like we used idempotency to prevent duplicate payments in our last explainer, here, you apply those exact same rigorous operational controls to prevent your on-chain supply from ever drifting away from off-chain reality. It's gotta be foolproof.
Section 6. Conclusion and next steps.
As we wrap up, I want you to always remember these 3 core design anchors. Number 1, separate the receipt from the registry. Keep the token mathematically light and put the heavy legal proofs in a separate PDA. Number 2, translate legal controls into explicit authorities, like your mint, freeze, and delegate levers. And number 3, enforce strict attestation cadences. Continuously verify the physical backing to maintain absolute economic credibility. That is how you build a robust system.
In our next explainer, we are going to take these abstract mechanics we just learned and apply them directly to compliance controls and settlement timing for highly specific real-world assets. We're going to see how these levers shift when you're tokenizing, say, short-term commercial paper versus a traditional warehouse receipt. It's going to be a lot of fun. So I leave you with this question to chew on. Are you ready to engineer your own tokenized warehouse receipts and literally bridge the physical divide? To dive deeper into these on-chain mechanics and explore a ton of other incredible Web3 topics, you've got to check out the resources over at forge.college. Keep building, stay curious, and I will see you in the next explainer.